As we celebrate Easter, we turn to John's Gospel, chapter 20. There we find an account of the disciples discovering the empty tomb and their encounter with the risen Lord. It's worth reflecting on the general context, because this proclamation of resurrection is not something that was common in that era. Certainly the Pharisees had a belief in the afterlife. The Sadducees strictly refused to believe that. The general belief was in a sort of an underworld, another world referred to as Sheol, where there was darkness, from which no one returned. So that when the early Christian community encountered the risen Lord and began to proclaim it, it came as something that was profoundly surprising, astonishing, countercultural. Here was a brand new message. St. Paul, writing in his first letter to the Corinthians about 25 years after Jesus was crucified and rose from the dead, writes to that community and says, "Now I would remind you, brothers and sisters, of the good news that I proclaimed to you. For I handed on to you as of first importance what I in turn had received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he was raised on the third day." This is, as it were, a fundamental, if you like, primitive proclamation of the belief in the resurrection. And at this time, 25 years on from the event, St. Paul is saying, I had received that. It's very much part of the belief of the Christian community. It was what gave rise to the actuality of the Christian community. Holy Saturday, and they would not have called it Holy Saturday, would have been a time of severe despondency, even despair. They saw this man who promised so much done to death like a common criminal. It is the resurrection that makes that dying come to life. So what can resurrection mean for us today? It cannot be dismissed, let me say at the beginning, cannot be dismissed, the story of the resurrection, as if it was just a myth, a legend, a fiction, a way of keeping alive the memory of a marvelous human being who promised so much and who has a moral message for us all. I think that is a travesty of the good news as testified in the New Testament. I suggest one way to approach the resurrection is to go right back to the burning bush in the book of Exodus chapter 3 verses 1 through 14, where there's a seminal moment in which God appears to Moses. Moses encounters the living God. There's the promise, I'm with you, and there's the naming that is no name. I am who I am. God's presence in our midst will be a mystery presence. I shall be there, as who I am shall I be there. The people of God, us included, have never comprehended that mystery presence. The mystery presence now is in the risen Lord, incomprehensible, unnameable, indescribable. The New Testament doesn't tell us exactly what it means, except the tomb was empty, they say. They encountered him. He actually appeared in a locked room. So whatever is the form of existence, it is not like what we know as bodily existence now. It is this openness to the presence of God in whatever form, in whatever way, under whatever circumstances, that constitutes our Easter faith. This presence was enfleshed in Jesus of Nazareth. His living and his dying are both a manifestation of that presence, which is a loving, liberating presence. In his dying, as in his living, we can become who we are called to be. The resurrection is now. It is a mode of Jesus' presence in our world, in our lives, even as we speak, a mode of presence that we will never understand. We must get used as Christians to saying, I believe, but I don't understand. Jesus is present in the Eucharist. Jesus is present in our brothers and sisters. Jesus is present in the world around us. I leave you with the question and invite you to wrestle with it. What does the resurrection mean to you? What difference does it make?